Chapter 311. Jingwan's face turned cold. Although in the emperor's harem, there was no lack of situations where aunts and nephews coexisted, and that place did not care about seniority, as the number one noble family, it was disgusting for them to do such a thing. Moreover, Li Hongyuan was not the emperor yet. To put it nicely, he was the grandfather. To put it bluntly, they were not related at all. Could it be that they were not related in name, so they could be so unscrupulous? To be able to give his own great-granddaughter to his grandson as a concubine, it was simply disregarding human relations. How could ordinary people be so shameless? Although the current noble families were not as good as the previous era when they could share the country with the emperor, they still cared about family status and face. They were also reserved and proud. For example, the current Jiang and Xia families were like this. Although they did not still adhere to the concept of marriage only with noble families of the same level, but among the 4 dukes and 9 marquises who founded the country, if any of them were born bumpkins, even if they were dukes or marquises, if they wanted to marry a concubine's daughter, they would be opposed by many clansmen. Even if there was no one in the branch for 3 generations, even if there was a problem with the girl herself, it was still not allowed. This was the concept of family status among the top noble families. In fact, in their bones, they didn't even take the Li royal family seriously. It was only because the other party was the emperor that they relaxed a little when it came to the marriage of a daughter. Even so, they couldn't do something like the marriage of an aunt and a niece. If the emperor wanted to rob them, he had to think twice. But looking at the daughters-in-law of the royal family, there were very few noble daughters. This was the true reflection of this point. The daughter of the main family, becoming a concubine. Messing up human relations. Sending herself to the door. If the other rich clans knew about this, they would probably completely reject the Pei clan's connections. Did the head of the Pei family know what he was doing? Or was it that he was certain that Li Hongyuan would rise to power? Was he certain that the Pei family would be the biggest winner in the end? As long as he won, he could ignore all mistakes. As long as he held power, not only would people not criticize him, but they would also curry favor with him. This kind of person was completely unscrupulous in order to achieve his goals. Jingwan was 100% sure that even if he didn't have any plans to remove her from the position of Li Hongyuan's official wife, he would definitely find a way to remove her in the future. Most likely, he wouldn't wait until after Li Hongyuan ascended the throne. It would be in the best interest of the Pei family to become the empress of Li Hongyuan. Only then could the Pei family restore the reputation of the Pei family. As for what method he would use, it was nothing more than to ruin her reputation and then do his best to raise the reputation of the Pei family's daughter. Jingwan sneered. No matter how good one's wishful thinking was, it still depended on whether the other party was willing or not. She was bound to make him fall before he could even take the first step. The most confident and calm part was probably the first step. Li Hongyuan saw the gloomy expression on Jingwan's face and smiled. The emperor's heart was comforted. This wife finally had some self-awareness. Was it easy for him to reach this step? In the Pei family's main family, is there not a single girl of marriageable age who is of the same generation as you? Or is there no daughter of the first wife? Otherwise, why would they arrange a marriage between the younger generation? It had always been the cousins that were the talk of the town. He had never heard of an uncle or a niece becoming a good couple. The current head of the Pei family has 2 wives who are sisters of the first wife. They have a very close relationship and gave birth to 5 sons and 3 daughters of the first wife. In terms of the relationship between mother and daughter, it's as if they were born from the same mother. The imperial noble consort is the youngest of the 6. Of the 5 sons of the first wife, the eldest son of the first wife remarried twice, the 3rd and 4th son of the first wife remarried once, and the number of children born of the first wife exceeded 20. There are also 3 unmarried girls. One of them is a pair of twin sisters who are 15 years old, and the other is even younger. As for those born of concubines, there are more than a dozen of them in the previous generation who have grown up. Carefully counting the people of the same generation as me, the ones born of the first wife, the ones born of concubines, 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 and the ones born of concubines. The total is about 156. Jingwan's mouth couldn't help but twitch. The men of the Pei family's main family were really studs, and those wives and concubines also seemed to be able to give birth. Are there so many surviving children in aristocratic families? Didn't they say that the harem of an aristocratic family was like the harem of an emperor? If one could have more than 10 sons, they would be considered outstanding even in the emperor. This Pei family's main family, just based on the number of children they had, one would think that they were a harmonious family. That old thing had a total of 5 brothers, and only one could compete with him for the position of the family head. When he took the position, he only had a younger brother who was 20 years younger than him, and he was born a little mentally retarded. Li Hongyuan purposely emphasized the word born. After he took power, the families of his brothers were separated. At that time, grandchildren were already born, and every family that was separated, old and young, did not have more than 2 people. Jingwan sucked in a breath of cold air. Comparing the two, the difference was too big. Wasn't he afraid of being criticized? How could that be? Li Hongyuan chuckled, laughing at Jingwan for thinking too simply. Everyone said that he was good at managing his family, and he took good care of his brothers and their families. When his father was alive, he often told others that this child was very kind. Such a big family, lively and harmonious, and there had never been any bad news from his harem. How could outsiders criticize him? They would only envy him and praise him. Wan, he valued his children very much. She didn't participate much in the internal strife, but she knew quite a lot. Valuing his children meant that the internal strife could not hurt his children. Only those with his blood were his family, and other women, regardless of whether they were his wives or concubines, were just tools for reproduction. Between his family and his tools, it was obvious who he would choose. If he really used blood to set the rules from the beginning, then it was not strange that the Pei family's main family was so flourishing. However, were the so-called family members really family members? Now it seemed that they were just pawns, and the degree of importance they were attached to was related to their role. Since he did it so carefully, he must cherish his reputation. When he gave you someone, it sounded better to give a granddaughter than a great-granddaughter. The reason why that old thing chose a great-granddaughter and not a granddaughter is probably the so-called sincerity. No matter which generation, the eldest son, regardless of whether it is a son or a daughter, will be greatly valued, especially in aristocratic families. Although there are granddaughters who are of marriageable age, although they are both daughters of the first wife, they are the second generation. Whether it is in terms of birth or beauty, they are a far cry from this one. Moreover, the world doesn't know about my relationship with the Pei family. By the time they know, the dust may have already settled. That's probably what that old thing thinks. Jingwan sneered. If the quality is not enough, then the quantity is enough. The twin sister's cousins are probably not worse than the first cousin's niece. He really thought that she was a soft persimmon. If she didn't properly return the favor, she would not be able to live up to her current reputation. What does Wan want to do? Li Hongyuan asked with a smile. Ah, Yuan, you don't understand. Yes, I don't understand. Li Hongyuan said calmly. If you don't understand, then do your own thing. You don't need to understand. Didn't I say that I will handle these matters? Men. Princess Consort. Send an invitation to the Min family's ship. This princess consort wants to have a chat with the two ladies. The subordinates passed the message. https://11/11807/6653589. Chapter 312. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan, who was nodding his head seriously and really didn't know what to say to him. It was the Min clan's ship. Since they didn't explicitly say that there were other people on board, even if they were interested in other people, you can't abandon the master and not care about them. Since they had already specified that there were two people, then you should understand who they really wanted to meet. Knowing this, why did you deliberately misinterpret it again? Although Min Shi was a close in-law of Pei Shi, they didn't defend you. Was there a need to vent your anger on them? Ah, Yuan, you don't need to intervene. If you're really bored, go take a swim in the water. Wan's suggestion is good. If I'm really bored to that extent, this husband will definitely give it a try. So, when this man wanted to go along with you, he could say anything and you couldn't do anything to him. The best way was to ignore him. Jingwan flicked her sleeves and left to see the beauty. Maybe she could find a bit of the imperial Gue Fei's elegance from this beauty. Behind her, on Min Shi's ship, when they received Jingwan's invitation, they were also very surprised. Especially when the invitation clearly said, two ladies. Did the other party mistakenly make them sisters, or, the other party already knew that there was another lady on board? It should be me and Yuanba. Speaking of which, I'm one more person on board. It's also our fault that we didn't make it clear. Since we've already invited them, we should apologize even more. The veiled woman said softly, her eyes shining brightly and carrying a faint smile. Speaking of which, I also want to see Jin Qin Wang Fei. After all, they were bound to become enemies in the future. Although this wasn't what she wanted, but she had no other choice. Whether it was for her clan or for herself, she had to fight. Meeting now, although it was unexpected, but it wasn't impossible. Under the circumstances where the other party was still unaware, it was easier to find out the truth. Obviously, this girl didn't think that Jingwan wanted to see her because she already knew of their Pei Shi's plan. After a careful grooming, even though this Miss Pei Shi did not dress up, but the details were done to the extreme. Not only was it for Jin Qin Wang Fei, she might even meet Jin Qin Wang. This first impression was of utmost importance. It could not be too excessive, but it absolutely could not have any flaws. However, the young ladies of the Min family did not know her purpose and only praised her for her beauty. They had never seen a more beautiful young lady than her. Miss Pei only smiled and didn't say anything else. After that, the two of them each brought two maidservants and a nanny and boarded Jingwan's ship. There were already servants waiting by the side, leading them to the cabin on the third floor. Because of her ulterior motives, Miss Pei Shi naturally saw more and more carefully. Surprise flashed through her heart. How to say it, as mentioned before, aristocratic families had their pride and heritage. Even if they already knew where their marriage would end up, but in their bones, they still looked down on the imperial family. Looking down on their taste, looking down on their heritage, looking down on their rules. Even though they didn't realize this point because they deliberately ignored it, but it was revealed in their every word and action. However, because of this, when they saw that everything around them was beyond their expectations, they felt surprised. Going up to the third floor, not to mention other things, when they saw the carpet on the floor, it was somewhat difficult to walk. Of course, as a young lady of an aristocratic family, they didn't do such a petty action. No matter what they thought in their hearts, they maintained a calm appearance. This was something that had integrated into their bones and blood and would not be easily affected. Gong Mama was waiting outside the guest room. When she saw the two young ladies, she greeted them in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The two instinctively returned the greeting. In that instant, they thought of her as a capable nanny by the side of an elder in their family. She was an existence that they had to show some respect to. When she realized what she had done, although Miss Min was a bit surprised, she didn't care too much. After all, she was a nanny by the side of an imperial concubine. This bit of respect was only natural. Miss Pei sure didn't think so in her heart. Along the way, she had seen more than one or two unexpected things. Therefore, what she originally thought would not be achieved so easily. Gong Mama glanced at Miss Pei. Because she was from the same family as the imperial noble consort, and because she had evil intentions, she couldn't help but pay more attention to her. Naturally, she compared her to the imperial noble consort. Although her face was covered, because it was a thin veil, it didn't have much of an effect. However, Gong Mama paid more attention to a person's temperament and bearing. It was said that this was the most beautiful young lady of the Pei family. In Jiangnan, because she always covered her face when she went out, the title of the most beautiful young lady didn't spread. However, her talent was quite famous. When other people saw Miss Pei for the first time, at least 9 out of 10 people would praise her. Even those who were jealous couldn't deny her. But Gong Mama didn't think so. With the imperial noble consort in front of her, the imperial noble consort also had a first-class temperament. This young lady was far inferior. Of course, this might be the result of Gong Mama's selfishness, but it was a fact that she couldn't compare. Don't blame Gong Mama for showing off her power at the door. Don't forget who she learned the rules from. The things of aristocratic families were really not difficult for her, although she didn't know it when she learned it. In addition, she wasn't an ordinary woman of the inner residence. She hadn't shown her power yet. Otherwise, few of these young ladies could stand still. After entering the door, they greeted her in a well-behaved manner, but obviously there wasn't much respect. Jingwan smiled noncommittally. She waved her hand casually and excused the formalities. Sit down. Jingwan didn't avoid looking at them. Their eyes fell on Jingwan. Although they weren't so direct, they didn't hide it. Chapter 313. Before Jingwan could say anything, Mama Gong spoke first. There are no men here, so why is Miss Pei wearing a veil? Are you looking down on our princess consort and feel that princess consort doesn't like your honor? Or are you afraid of frightening our princess consort if you're ugly? If it's the latter, then it's fine. But if it's the former, is this the upbringing and etiquette of a noble family's young lady? These words were not polite at all. Jingwan was a bit speechless. Her mama's temper seemed to be a bit big. But she didn't say anything wrong. Of course, her own people couldn't undermine her. It was impossible for the other side's people to remain indifferent, especially the people who served Miss Pei. Their eyes were almost spitting fire. In the end, they remembered their status and didn't immediately talk back. Something carved into their bones didn't allow them to do anything rude. This was their pride as servants of noble families. That's right, they were all servants. They looked down on people of the same status outside of noble families. In Jiangnan, they had always looked down their noses at the servants in the official's residence. So what if she was a Qin Wang Fei? How could the people around her follow rules and etiquette? Their faces didn't show it, but their eyes showed disdain and disapproval. Were the maids by Jingwan's side that bad? Of course not. It was just that compared to these people who had learned rules from a young age and integrated all kinds of rules into their daily habits, rules and etiquette to them were not rules and etiquette. They were just ordinary meals. Naturally, they were lacking. But Jingwan didn't care at all. They were carved from the same mold. What was there to care about? Even if the people around her could be trained like this, she didn't want them. Princess Consort, please allow me to report. Our miss is not looking down on Princess Consort. It's just that when she goes out, it's all like this. It's a habit. At this point, Miss Pei suppressed the anger in her heart. She raised a hand to stop her mama from continuing. She took off her veil and revealed a country-toppling beauty. I hope Princess Consort doesn't take offense. It's really a habit. We don't mean to disrespect Princess Consort. Jingwan smiled. It's fine. She had the servants bring in tea and refreshments. He thought to himself, sure enough, she's beautiful beyond compare. In Jingwan's view, the so-called beauty could hardly be the best. She had to admit that this woman was the most beautiful among all the women she had ever seen. She glanced at Nanny Gong casually and found that Nanny Gong was not moved at all. She wondered whether Nanny Gong was expressionless or not, or Nanny Pei was still not as beautiful as the imperial noble consort in those days. Compared with the two girls, Jingwan's clothes were actually more casual. She only wore a few hairpins on her head and a string of Buddha beads around her wrist. At first glance, she looked a little shabby, but in fact, she was not. Anyone with a little eyesight could see that all her clothes were good. What showed was a low-key and elegant luxury. This casualness and calmness made the Pei clan's daughter, who was meticulous to every detail, feel that she was at a disadvantage. Jingwan didn't deliberately say anything to them. She just chatted with them. Perhaps Jingwan was not as beautiful or talented as Miss Pei, but she could deal with this kind of situation easily. In fact, she was almost 1 year younger than Miss Pei. However, she had more experience and knowledge than Miss Pei. Not to mention the things in her previous life. In this life, she loved travel books and miscellaneous studies. She also dabbled in history books. She had read a lot of books in the past few years. After marrying Li Hongyuan, she talked about the current situation of the world almost every day. Her knowledge was constantly increasing. Even if Miss Pei was very knowledgeable and quoted classics, as long as it was special, she could grasp 70% or 80% of it. To be honest, she was not afraid. Miss Pei also wanted to test Jingwan's depth. After all, she was a great enemy. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy. Only then could she better plan her future path. Therefore, Miss Pei, who usually seemed gentle and kind, but was actually arrogant and always kept a certain distance from others, changed her usual self and became much more friendly. Miss Min, who was beside her, kept glancing at her. However, because she was a girl with a big heart, she didn't mind being left out. As for the fact that she couldn't get a word in, she didn't care too much about it. In any case, there were so many talented girls around her. She couldn't flatter them and had already gotten over it. As time passed, Jingwan could only sigh. Miss Pei was indeed a girl carefully groomed by a top aristocratic family. Even if she grew up in a boudoir, she still had extraordinary knowledge. But why would such a young lady want to be a concubine for no reason? Did she really have the supreme consciousness of, since my family gave me a life of hardship, I will give everything to my family? Or did she have great ambition and came to be the mother of the world? Or was it a combination of both? Compared to Jingwan, the fluctuations in Miss Pei's heart were much more intense. Before, she was confident that even if she was a concubine for a while, she wouldn't be a concubine for life. What she relied on was not only her beauty and talent, but also her insight and wisdom. She deeply believed that she could not only be a virtuous wife and stabilize his inner residence, she could also become his strategist and assist him in obtaining the throne. This was an advantage that other women didn't have. She didn't know much about Jean Qin Wang. Basically, it all came from her great-grandfather. But on this point, she firmly believed that a man like Jean Qin Wang, because he held the pearl of wisdom, would not be afraid of a woman's talent. On the contrary, in her opinion, the more intelligent she was, the more she would gain his favor. Even if her guess was wrong, she could adjust in time. But after a conversation with Jean Qin Wang Fei, her self-confidence suddenly decreased. She disdained to use her beauty to suppress Jean Qin Wang Fei, but the advantage she thought she had, in fact, the other party was better than her. Even if she didn't want to admit it, this was an indisputable fact. This wasn't the most serious thing. She found out from her great-grandfather that Jean Qin Wang Fei was younger than her and hadn't been in the position of Jean Qin Wang Fei for long. Although she also came from a scholarly family, it was far worse than an aristocratic family. In her estimation, the other party wasn't as good as her in any aspect, but the fact was that it wasn't so. Not to mention the bearing and self-restraint that had been cultivated for many years from being in a high position, as well as the knowledge and wisdom that far surpassed her peers, it made her feel for no reason that she was facing an elder with penetrating insight. It wasn't that she was deliberately testing her, but she was receiving the other party's guidance. This feeling was really terrible. Miss Pei received a blow that wasn't light, and for a time, she had doubts about herself. She doubted whether it was right for her to continue on like this. Could she really be like what her great-grandfather said, to stand at the highest position and become the support of the clan? However, this mentality didn't last long. Even though she received a blow, but this meeting in advance still had more advantages than disadvantages. At least it let her sober up a bit and let her know that her opponent wasn't easy to deal with. Her previous disregard and even contempt was because she thought too highly of herself. Her face was gentle, but her bones were cold. She indeed looked down on a lot of people, but it wasn't that she didn't know her own limits. She couldn't use the area that she thought she had the most advantage in the beginning, but she had another weapon, beauty. How many men in the world could not be seduced by beauty, and Jean Qin Wang himself was the leader in this aspect. No matter what method she used, as long as she won him over, there would naturally be a way to make him not turn back. What Jean Qin Wang Fei had, she also had. What Jean Qin Wang Fei didn't have, she also had. No matter how she looked at it, her chances of winning were greater. Jingwan probably didn't think that in this extremely short period of time, this cousin's niece's thoughts had turned so many twists and turns. If she knew, she would probably say, "Miss Pei, where did this come from? You're thinking too much." If Peisha really wanted to borrow Jean Qin Wang to rise, the best and simplest way was to take out all of Peisha's power and help him to the greatest extent. Honestly, don't make any messy moths. No matter how big this ambition was, don't show it. After the matter was done, no matter how bad it was, at least 30%. Even if it didn't reach the expected height, based on the special relationship between Peisha and Jean Qin Wang, based on Peisha's large number of talents and deep background, it was only a matter of time before they once again became a genuine aristocratic family. The clan head of Peisha thought too much, calculated too much, had too much ambition, and thought too highly of himself. Little did he know that the power of Peisha, in Li Hongyuan's eyes, was actually worse than chicken ribs. Moreover, he was the kind of person who had a strong desire for control. If you wanted to control him instead, then you could only hee-hee. Jingwan wanted to see the beauty, and this goal was achieved. As for whether she liked or disliked this Miss Pei, because she didn't know the specific thoughts of the other party, she couldn't talk about it for the time being. If it was because she had no choice, or was forced by the clan, or shouldered the clan's honor and disgrace, she could still be forgiven. If, seeing that it was almost time, Jingwan didn't keep them any longer. But when she left, she gave each of them a gift, which was considered a meeting gift. Then she let Gong Mama personally send them out. It was just that on the corridor outside, she unexpectedly met Li Hongyuan, who came to find Jingwan. Even if she hadn't seen Li Hongyuan before, she should have guessed who he was at this time. She hurriedly stopped to greet him. Li Hongyuan turned a blind eye and was about to walk past them when Miss Pei suddenly stopped in her tracks. Raise your head. Usually, this was actually very rude, but the other party's status was noble, so there was no way for her to refuse. Moreover, wasn't this the situation that Miss Pei wanted? After all, he was her future husband. No matter what, Miss Pei was inexplicably nervous. Her palms were faintly sweaty, and a faint blush crept up her face unconsciously. She raised her head discreetly, but her gaze was downwards. She didn't look directly at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan sized her up for a moment. When he saw Miss Pei's posture, he curled his lips mockingly and left in a huff. Chapter 314. Miss Pei was still in a daze when Miss Min beside her pulled her, Ma Ying Jijie. Miss Pei returned to her senses. Nothing, let's go. Gong Mama glanced at her and sneered in her heart. Wang Ye only looked at you once, what else could there be? Did you really think that Wang Ye was a lecherous person and that just because he noticed you, he took a fancy to you? The girls taught by Pei Shi were becoming more and more unsightly. Compared to the imperial Gui Fei of the past, the difference was more than just appearance. However, Pei Shi definitely had ideas about Wang Ye for more than a day or two. This girl must have been specially trained to achieve certain goals. Thus, she could easily accept the fact that she would be married to uncle as a concubine. Aristocratic family. Wealthy family. It was the biggest joke in the world. Gong Mama didn't go down to the third floor. She just crouched down at the top of the stairs and didn't wait for the other party to show any sign of shrinking back before she turned back. Miss Min opened her mouth as if she didn't know what to say. After a pause, she finally whispered in dissatisfaction, "This is too rude." And Jin Qin Wang. Yuan, be careful with your words. Pei Ma Ying gently interrupted Miss Min, let's go. She reached out and took the other's wrist. Li Hongyuan went to find Jingwan. Jingwan was still sitting in the same place, holding her chin and lost in thought. Li Hongyuan waved his hand in front of her. Wan, why are you so serious? Jingwan looked up at him and hooked up a shallow smile. I'm reminiscing about the beauty. Since a Yuan came over now, he must have seen someone. Li Hongyuan nodded. There's no need to reminisce. If Wan likes it, I'll let people peel off that beauty's skin and let you hang it in front of me. You can look at it every day. Jingwan choked. Did he have to be so cruel? This human skin is just a thin layer. How long can it be preserved if it's animal skin? It's better to leave it on a person. At least it's fresh. Fresh. Li Hongyuan seemed to be chewing. Wan is right. I'll let people study it. It won't be too late to peel it off when it can be kept fresh. Could they not talk about this? Li Hongyuan also knew when to stop and didn't mention it. As for the two Gunyang who had obtained Pei Shi and Min Shi, they returned to Min Shi's ship. As Min Shi's elder brother, who had admired Pei Yuing for a long time, how could they sit quietly when they boarded the ship of Jin Qin Wang, who had a reputation for being dissolute and lecherous? Knowing that the two had returned, they naturally rushed over in a hurry. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with the two, they suppressed their impatience and revealed a warm smile. They pretended to be unintentional, but in reality, they were trying to find out why Jin Qin Wang Fei wanted to see them. He was afraid that something unexpected would happen. Pei Xiuying directly said that she was a little tired and went back to her room. Young Master Min naturally nodded his head and agreed. He watched them leave gracefully and then pulled his sister to ask all kinds of questions. Jin Qin Wang Fei or whatever, he had no interest at all. He only paid attention to how Jin Qin Wang was doing. And what about Jin Qin Wang? It was just the last time they met and the other party only said one sentence. But when he heard this sentence, young Master Min directly exploded and lost his reason. He wanted to rush onto the largest official ship and fight Li Hongyuan. Min Shi was too lazy to pay attention to him. In any case, every time someone tried to matchmake Ma Yingying Jijie, he would go crazy. The wooden planks between the two ships had already been removed. If you have the ability, go up. Although Min Shi was a broad-minded person, it didn't mean that she was stupid. As a bystander, she might be able to see more clearly than Pei Xiuying, who was involved. She was at least 70% sure that Jin Qin Wang Fei wanted to see Ma Yingying Jijie, and she was only there in passing. Ma Yingying Jijie's attitude was also very strange. There must be something that she didn't know. However, no matter what the secret was, she wasn't interested in exploring it. She just looked at her elder brother with pity. Ma Yingying Jijie wasn't someone that you could covet. Save it. Every time you go crazy behind her back, not to mention that Pei Shi and Ma Yingying Jijie didn't know, even if they knew, they wouldn't pay attention to you. With no way to find them, young Master Min randomly cursed Li Hongyuan on his own ship. He called out his surname and scolded Li Hongyuan as unbearable as he could. Fortunately, everyone on the ship was on his own side. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. After that, the journey was smooth and there weren't any problems. When they arrived at Sichuan Zhoufu, there were also many officials lining the streets to welcome them. This time, all the important officials in Shannon County, except for the Admiral Xuezheng who was detained, were all present. Li Hongyuan's gaze swept over them one by one but didn't say much. Tomorrow was the provincial examination and Li Hongyuan didn't deliberately delay the time. Perhaps it was a habit formed in the two places, but this time, they also prepared a side courtyard. As the main examiner, Li Hongyuan, the boss, wasn't present, so naturally, there wasn't a banquet. Without paying attention to the others, he directly called the deputy examiner and threw out 3 sets of questions, letting him choose one by himself. The third round would be brought up to the first round and quickly prepare the exam questions needed tomorrow. Although this was against the rules, but at this time, no one would foolishly go up and talk to Jin Qin Wang about the rules. Speaking of which, this deputy examiner was relieved. If they really followed the conventional order, even if it was printed and not copied, they wouldn't be able to produce the exam questions tomorrow. At that time, could they still say that it was Jin Qin Wang's fault? Naturally, they couldn't. The deputy examiner also didn't dare to be negligent. At this time, he also didn't refuse. He casually took one of the 3 sets and then asked Jin Qin Wang to send a few guards. Li Hongyuan let Li Suyan transfer a few people to escort him back to the examination courtyard. The original examiners were all waiting there. When they learned of Jin Qin Wang's decision, they all breathed a sigh of relief. However, even so, they still had to quickly prepare the exam questions for the third round. Because of the urgency of time, they couldn't care too much about the rules and work together. The provincial examination was important. Li Hongyuan didn't see the other officials, it was simply open and aboveboard. In fact, even if there wasn't this matter, Li Hongyuan said that he didn't see them, it was also justified. Jingwan was a bit puzzled. Since printing was already available, why did the exam questions still need to be copied? In order to be completely unified, wasn't printing better? A scholar should have the appearance of a scholar. How could the exam questions be printed? Li Hongyuan lightly opened his mouth. This is the reason for making this rule. Li Hongyuan gave an affirmative answer. Jingwan was also speechless. Just like in her previous life, there were a large number of students and a large number of exam questions. If they were to be manually copied, just thinking about it made her shiver. The teachers would definitely go on strike in groups. The next day, the doors of the examination courtyard opened wide. The examinees entered and were strictly searched one by one. Moreover, there were black-robed guards with knives to suppress the scene. Before they even entered, their legs were already weak. Especially those who had something wrong with them, even if it was just a little bit, they were all found out. It seemed that because of the problems in the previous examination, the provincial examination this time was especially strict. After entering, time was up. The doors of the examination courtyard closed and the rules were explained. Then, the examination questions were directly given. It could be said that it wasn't clean and efficient. However, when the examinees received the examination questions, there was a commotion one after another. Was there a mistake with the questions? The sound of gongs and drums rang. For a moment, the examinees quieted down and waited for an explanation. It wasn't that the questions were wrong. It was really the third round's questions that had been brought up to the first round. It was called a test of everyone's ability to adapt to the situation and lay a foundation for future officials. After all, at that time, anything could happen. Those who were still clear-headed knew that this was nonsense. They also quickly understood the reason behind it. It actually didn't have much of an impact on these people. If you like to hear the official nonsense, then listen to a few sentences. If you didn't like to hear it, then just go in one ear and out the other. For the examinees, did the adjustment of the examination room's order have any impact? Of course not. The impact was actually very big. It was an examination that concerned their entire life. Most people were nervous. The imperial examinations rounds were actually progressing from easy to difficult. Some people were more confident in the beginning. When faced with a difficult question, they would naturally be more nervous. Moreover, if they didn't answer well, the later rounds would inevitably be affected. The result could be imagined. Look, it was just the beginning. Some people's hands and feet were already trembling and sweating. They couldn't sit still and their hands couldn't hold the pen. They could barely hold it. Large drops of ink dripped onto the paper. Fortunately, it was only draft paper. If not, in just 2 hours, there were actually people who fainted. Without a doubt, this examination was completely over. One had to know that according to the normal order, those who did well in the earlier rounds might not do so well in the later rounds, but they still had a chance. Obviously, the adjustment of the rounds had a more serious impact than expected. Facing the other examiners' gazes, Li Hongyuan sneered, although your previous words were dignified, they weren't without reason. If you can't even handle such a small matter, how can you handle the world's affairs? This kind of person, even if he is talented, is not suitable to be an official. It's better to remove him as soon as possible. Chapter 3:15. With that said, the others naturally didn't dare to say more. They just loved to surf the internet. It had to be known that these people might not have been involved in the previous court examination cheating case or participated in the SALT policy, but that didn't mean that they weren't involved in corruption. A knife called living hell was still hanging over their heads. They had heard of the wretchedness of the many officials in Chongzhou, but even if they gave away all their wealth, it didn't mean that the matter was over. The other examiners had to keep watch. Li Hongyuan was an exception. He could leave or stay as he pleased, but no one said a word. Regardless of whether it was because of fear or something else, when he wasn't there, they were much more relaxed. Thus, perhaps they wished that he didn't come. Li Hongyuan didn't just wash his hands of the matter. No matter if it was morning or afternoon, he would take some time to come and sit. 3 days and 2 nights later, it was time for the first exam. Other than the fact that more people were taken out in the middle of the exam than in previous years, there didn't seem to be any difference. All the answer sheets were collected and sealed. Because the inner curtain official was still busy copying the questions that should have been in the first exam but had been placed in the third exam, marking the papers was temporarily put aside. Li Hongyuan hugged his wife to sleep every night. Everything that happened outside seemed to have nothing to do with him. Compared to his leisure, Jingwan could be said to be busy. Ever since the start of the provincial examination, there had been a succession of officials' wives coming to visit. It had to be known that the prefectural city and county city were the same, but Chongzhou couldn't compare to them. In a normal prefectural city, the prefectural leader was the boss, at most a fourth-rank official. In a county city, the prefectural leader could only stand to the side. Perhaps she had once thought of being picky and accepting, but now it was different. Regardless of whether the gift was light or heavy, Jingwan accepted it all. She would warm up to those that caught her eye, and she couldn't be bothered with those that didn't catch her eye. After all, her attitude had been made clear. These things were completely insufficient. The exact situation in Chongzhou wasn't known, but she could probably empathize with those people. The greed of Jin Wangfei was like a bottomless pit that couldn't be filled. But even so, what could she do? Not give it. In 2 days, after Jin Qinwang finished his provincial examination, he would invite the officials to drink tea. It was possible that he would not be able to return. In this way, no matter how painful or ruthless her heart was, she could only grit her teeth and endure. Not only that, when she faced Jin Qinwang Fei again, she still had to wear a smiling face, hold her up, flatter her, and only hope to coax her to be happy so that she could blow wind in Jin Qinwang's ear. Of course, everyone knew that if the matter was too big, it would be useless to rely solely on Bian Feng. However, according to the situation of Chongzhou Prefecture, as long as the treasury was more or less tidied up, it would not be difficult to fool Prince Jin with the items on the account. Of course, as long as Jin Qinwang did not leave Jiangnan, the suspended hearts of the people would not be able to fall to the ground. It wasn't until the afternoon of the second exam that an unexpected visitor came. Perhaps the visitor knew Li Hongyuan's schedule for the past few days. When the visitor came, Li Hongyuan had just woken up from his afternoon nap. When Li Hongyuan saw the post, he didn't comment on it. He tossed the post aside and let them in. Jingwan picked up the post and saw the name at the end. Min Yuhan. This is a member of the Min clan. What did this person come here for? The former fiancé of the Imperial Gui Fei. Li Hongyuan did not hide anything, to make that person on the throne suspect and even kill the culprit. His tone was undisciplined. It should have been a shocking matter, but from his mouth, it was categorized as, "Today's weather is good." At least Jingwan's heart jumped. Yuan has seen him. Did he come here on his own? This person hates the historical imperial family, especially that person on the throne, to the bone. Last year's incident at the western border was caused by him. He was discovered in time and captured, so it did not lead to more serious consequences. The person was brought to Qingda's summer palace. At that time, his identity was known. Jingwan wanted to say, "You have people at the border, your hands are stretched too far." However, this was not the main point. Because of the Imperial Gui Fei, you let him go. He volunteered to be a spy for this prince and work in Jiangnan. Jingwan's expression was a little difficult to say. After a moment, she said, because of the deep roots of love, he originally hated her. After seeing you, he changed his attitude. Just because you are the only bloodline of the person he loves. Even if half of the blood of his enemy is in you, he still loves you more than he hates you. Some things should be known to him. Li Hongyuan was a little meaningful. Jingwan understood tacitly. If nothing happened in the middle, how could there be such a big change in his attitude? Also, according to this man's temperament, if he did not do anything and just let her go, it would not be in line with his character. Jingwan could even imagine that Min Yuhan was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He probably did not die immediately because he wanted to send his beloved child to the throne. Then, he would have a little face to see his beloved. Jingwan did not comment on this kind of person. She could only say that a pitiful person must have a hateful side. Li Hongyuan went to see Min Yuhan. Compared to last year, he did not look as dispirited, especially on the outside. After meticulous grooming, he seemed to have finally found his way forward and had the motivation to continue living. After nearly a year of recuperation, he had put on some weight and was able to support his clothes. His bearing that belonged to an aristocratic family was evident. Even though he was already middle-aged, he did not lose his handsomeness. It was just that he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. If one were to describe this vicissitudes of life, it would be wisdom. This kind of person could easily not express his emotions because his heart was already dead. However, when needed, he could also be a top-notch actor. Greetings, Your Highness. Min Yuhan greeted Li Hongyuan calmly. However, his gaze was always downcast and he did not look at Li Hongyuan. It was obvious that his heart was not so calm. Li Hongyuan sat on the main seat casually. What do you want from me? He was not polite at all. This matter is very important. It involves not only the short-sighted officialdom but also the struggle between the aristocratic families. Although I know that Your Highness is talented and wise, you are not particularly familiar with Jiangnan. It is inevitable that you will be negligent. There are also some people who are sinister. This commoner is bold and wants to make a decision on my own. I want to do something for Your Highness. However, I do not know what Your Highness is planning and dare not act rashly to avoid alerting the enemy. I just sorted out the relationship between the aristocratic families and the officialdom, hoping that it will be of some use to Your Highness. As he finished speaking, Min Yuhan presented a small booklet. Li Hongyuan did not refuse. He let Muan take the booklet and casually flipped through it. After reading 2 or 3 pages, Li Hongyuan's face was slightly solemn. He flipped through the booklet until it was finished and pressed it beside his hand. It is somewhat useful. Although Li Hongyuan had planted people in Jiangnan, there were limitations and it was not convenient for him to make a move. For example, within the aristocratic families, the closer the person was to the core, the harder it was to arrange a spy. The people around those people were generally from a young age and were very loyal. Whether it was bribing or replacing them, it was very difficult. Min Yuhan was different. He was the direct descendant of the main family of the Min family and was originally highly valued. However, he was marginalized by the family because of an accident. Now that he had returned to the family, even if the family was still indifferent, they could not deny his talent. There were some things that he did not need to take the initiative to do, but people would take the initiative to come to him. He would occasionally say a few words and hit the nail on the head. Naturally, the family would rely on him more and more. If he wanted to know something, it would not attract attention if it did not affect the family's interests. This might not be a big deal within the aristocratic families, but it was very difficult for outsiders to find out. When Min Yuhan heard this, he was slightly relieved. It would be great if it could be useful to Prince Pei. To be honest, when Li Hongyuan met with an accident, he was as worried and anxious as anyone else. However, he quickly realized that things might not be as he had expected. Because of those traces, he calmed down and carefully probed. With some deductions, he had already guessed most of the situation. Even though he knew that Li Hongyuan was not really in danger, Min Yuhan's mood did not improve at all. Instead, his life experience became even more gloomy. All these years, he had been muddle-headed and didn't think too much about it. After he woke up, he carefully sorted out the things that happened back then and felt that something was wrong. Some things weren't as simple as they seemed on the surface. In the past year, while he was secretly helping Li Hongyuan with some things, he carefully investigated little by little. Heaven didn't disappoint those who worked hard. Finally, he found something useful. Just the little bit of information that surfaced made him hate Patriarch Pei to the bone. Back then, when he was still a prince, he went down south and met the daughter of the Pei family by chance. He fell in love at first sight. At that time, the current clan leader Pei and his brother were fighting for the position of clan leader. That kind of fight was not inferior to the fight for the position of clan leader. It was just that the scope of the fight was not as big. The current clan leader Pei's brother grabbed onto this matter and did not let it go. He said that not only was it related to the imperial family, it was also against the teachings of the ancestors. The clan leader Pei loved his daughter so much that he even did some inappropriate things. However, in the end, he chose the family and gave up on himself. Not only did he let his youngest daughter die suddenly, he also heartlessly removed her from the family tree. Because of this, he was very depressed for a period of time. However, Min Yuhan realized that to a certain extent, this matter had established his unshakable position as the successor. Min Yuhan also understood the current clan leader Pei's character from various aspects. The more he understood, the more frightened and at the same time, the more he hated him. As the clan leader of the Pei family, he might be impeccable for the benefit of the entire family. However, he was cold-blooded and heartless. He was ruthless and his methods were ruthless. As long as he thought it was worth it, he would not even blink an eye. As long as he thought it was worth it, he would even give up on his own family. He would even use all kinds of schemes. In his eyes, there were only useful people and useless people. The former could be doted on in every possible way. The latter, under normal circumstances, would be completely ignored. If they bumped into him, he would not hesitate to trample them into the mud. Because of this further understanding, he did not think that the incident back then was just a coincidence. He further investigated. Although there was no concrete evidence, according to his guess, Feng Wu being seen by Emperor Qing was perhaps not an accident at all. It was a setup and this person was most likely the old clan leader Pei. Min Yuhan once again became a trapped beast. Bit by bit, he rushed into the Pei family to confront him face to face. Previously, he did not understand the reason why the clan leader Pei did this until he understood that the Pei family had been paying attention to Jin Qinhuang all these years. Until he knew that it was possible that the old thing had kidnapped Jin Qinhuang. It was as if he was enlightened. He thought of a possibility. All the schemes were perhaps for one thing. A prince with the Pei family's bloodline. As long as the operation was done properly, the Pei family entering the imperial court would be a matter of pushing the boat with the current. Although it was only a guess, but after thinking it over and over again, this possibility was very large. Moreover, he completely did not have a reason to exonerate that old thing. He was so sure that it could be said that he hated that old thing to the bones. Especially when the other party put on a hypocritical face and sighed to him, saying that the Pei family had wronged him. He hated that he could not drink his blood and eat his flesh. But what he was even more shocked about was that his hatred was monstrous yet he did not show the slightest bit of it and feigned civility. However, this plan could not keep up with the changes. No one would have thought that because of him, Emperor Qing, who was very suspicious, would kill Xuan Xiu in a rage. Moreover, Xuan Xiu's only son was born as a devil. Even though Emperor Qing treated his son very well, he did not give him any rights. Probably because of this, the Pei family did not come knocking on his door earlier. Now, that old thing finally made a move on Jin Qinhuang. How could he endure it? Wang, yeah, the Pei family has malicious intentions, especially the Pei family's clan head, that old thing. In order to achieve his goal, he would do anything. Wang, yeah, please be careful. That old thing's actions have been known by you. It seems that he is not very secretive. Li Hongyuan was indifferent. It was not contempt, but he felt that it was better than contempt. Chapter 316. Min Yuhan forced a smile. Hearing what your highness said, you must not have been misled by the other party. Thinking about it, with your highness's wisdom, how could you be so easily bullied by that kind of person? You have a lot of opinions about him, and even a lot of resentment. What, did you discover something new in the past year? Li Hongyuan didn't comment on his flowers. Instead, he casually tapped on the booklet under his hand. The hatred in Min Yuhan's eyes was directly released at this moment, but then she realized that she should not lose her composure. She closed her eyes fiercely, and when she opened them again, the emotions in them were completely gone. After thinking for a while, she speculated about what she had found out. It's not strange that that old thing would do such a thing. Li Hongyuan did not have any emotions, however, speaking of which, to a certain extent, this prince should be grateful to him. Without his move, this prince might not exist. How can it not exist? Without this matter, you should be my son. Min Yuhan was so agitated that she blurted out such a rebellious thing. Li Hongyuan laughed mockingly, looking at Min Yuhan as if he was looking at a dead person. Min Yuhan felt a chill all over her body, and only then did she realize that she had said something inappropriate. Your Highness, please forgive this commoner. This commoner was just momentarily. Even if she married you back then, the child she gave birth to will have the blood of you and her. So, what does this have to do with this prince? Can your blood be the same as the one on the dragon throne and produce the same offspring? Even if you have the same father and mother, the two children will be completely different. Li Hongyuan did not seem to be angry, and his mood seemed to be quite good. Your Highness is right, this commoner was impetuous and did not mean to offend you, please forgive me. If there is nothing else, you can leave. This prince still has to go to the tribute institution. Li Hongyuan's expression changed in an instant, and he unceremoniously asked her to leave. This commoner heard that the Min family has a boat from Chongzhou Prefecture to Chuanzhou Prefecture with your Highness. Does your Highness know the person on the boat? Min Yuhan hesitated. Pei Xiuying. Li Hongyuan directly pointed out, that's all you have. Is this king's lecherous reputation so deeply rooted in people's hearts? This commoner has worried too much. This commoner will take his leave. Min Yuhan bowed and left. Speaking of which, Min Yuhan was simply too concerned. To a certain extent, he really treated Li Hongyuan as his own son. Of course, this was only in his heart. He no longer had any expectations or attachments to the world. Now, he only wanted to do his best to help Fu Cheng's child ascend the throne. Perhaps, he would add one more point to prevent that old thing from getting what he wanted. This latter point, perhaps he didn't need to do anything himself. Looking at Jin Qinhuang's attitude, it could be said that he would end up trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. He must let him die with a grievance. There was also Pei Xiuying. Even someone like her was being compared to Bai Xiuying. He had to do something. After exiting the door, Min Yuhan's face seemed to have changed. It was as if he was shrouded in gloom and pain. He was trying his best to restrain himself. If Jingwan saw this, she would probably gasp in amazement again. These acting skills were amazing. Speaking of which, how many people were staring at Li Hongyuan now? Those who came to find him would naturally be known by all parties. At this time, it was very difficult to secretly come to see him. As such, they might as well visit him openly. Those who didn't know the reason would naturally allow him to guess and inquire. Those who knew the reason, what could they do? They wouldn't say a word. When he heard that Jin Wangye was going to Jiangnan, Min Yuhan had been in a state of anxiety for quite some time. At this time, it was already close to his eyelids. It was reasonable that he couldn't help but visit. Those who frequently interacted with the Pei family's main family would sooner or later discover some clues just from his face. As for Qing Di, would he be worried that this matter would be known by others? Naturally not. In fact, other people didn't know that Li Hongyuan first knew about his birth mother from Qing Di's mouth. At that time, it was because of Pei Shi and the imperial Gui Fei herself that her birth was concealed. Qing Di's taboo was never this, but the death of the imperial Gui Fei. What was even more taboo was that he killed her with his own hands. If this layer of relationship was exposed, he wouldn't care as long as there was no contact between them. This time, he sent Yu Zhongxing to follow Li Hongyuan to prevent this son from winning over the officials of Jiangnan. It was also to prevent him from coming into contact with Pei Shi's people. If they didn't come into contact, it was naturally good for everyone. If they did, he would have to take some measures in the future. Of course, this was his most beloved son after all. It was just restricting his freedom so that he couldn't leave the capital. If Pei Shi tried to use his son to do something, he wouldn't be soft-hearted. In any case, he didn't have a good impression of Pei Shi. Li Hongyuan looked at the door, lost in thought, for a moment. He retracted his gaze, looked at the book, and casually threw it to an E, "Do as you see fit." An E took it and made a sound of agreement. Li Hongyuan still took a stroll around the tribute court. It seemed that there wasn't any change, but in fact, he had another plan in his heart. The number of people he wanted to kill and deter seemed to have increased. Although the main residence of the Min clan wasn't in Chuanzhoufu, it wasn't willing to leave Chuanzhoufu. There were quite a few Min clan members in Chuanzhoufu. For example, the Min clan siblings who arrived at Chuanzhoufu with Li Hongyuan were still in the Fu city. Speaking of which, these two people were very close to Min Yuhan. Their grandfather was Min Yuhan's cousin. This good-looking, good-tempered, and knowledgeable maternal grandfather had just gone out for a trip, but when he came back, he immediately collapsed. He was directly carried down from the carriage, but this startled everyone in the residence. They hurriedly brought him into the house and called for a doctor. They were busy saving people inside the house, and outside the house, they began to interrogate the manservant about what had happened. The manservant was also trembling with fear. Old master went to pay his respects to Jin Qin Wang. When he came out, he didn't look too good. In the end, in the carriage, many of the younger generation were filled with righteous indignation, wondering if Jin Qin Wang had done something to him. As for the head of the residence, she seemed to be silent. Obviously, she was the one who knew the truth. After a moment, the old madam sighed, sinful awe. The younger generation didn't understand and asked one after another. The old madam waved her hand, telling them not to ask too much. This matter was a secret between the Pei clan and the imperial family. It was better not to know. When the doctor came out, he asked the reason for fainting. Sure enough, it was due to excessive stimulation. In addition, his body wasn't very good and he had been depressed recently. As the sister-in-law, she went into the room to take a look. Even though he was unconscious, he was still restless. His mouth kept shouting something. Only she knew that it was two words, "Hey hey." Chapter 317. As the son of an aristocratic family, you're actually such an infatuated person. It's been almost 30 years and you still can't let go. She didn't know whether to sigh or ridicule him. It was normal for a son of an aristocratic family to have many wives and concubines and heaps of children. For a woman like this, not only did he not marry for life, he didn't even have a servant girl to warm his bed. That was the oddity and the object of ridicule. Many people would be disappointed, and many people would say that he didn't look like a man when it came to love. But from a woman's point of view, how many people didn't agree with him on the surface, but their hearts were sour and jealous. They were sour because they couldn't meet a man who only cared about them. They were jealous of the woman he was thinking about. Then she ordered people to serve him well and inform her as soon as he was ready. This person's curiosity was not so easy to extinguish. Sometimes, the more she stopped him, the more he wanted to know. This group of Min Shi's juniors secretly wanted to find the truth. But this matter was obviously related to Enchanting Wang. What could be related to Enchanting Wang? It was said that people loved to imagine a love and hate relationship. Not to mention other things, they still knew the reason why Min Yuhan didn't marry. It was said that his fiancée, Pei Shi's daughter, had a sudden illness not long before the marriage. He was deeply in love with his fiancée, and the other party's death was a huge blow to him. He was once unable to recover from the setback, and it took several years for him to recover. Even so, he was always traveling outside. It was said that Pei Shi's daughter was recognized as the #1 beauty in Jiangnan. Even the current Pei Yuing was not as good as her. If you ask me, maybe granduncle's fiancée didn't die at all, but was snatched away by Jin Shang. We all know the relationship between Pei Shi and the Li imperial family. For the sake of the family's reputation, it was announced that she died of a sudden illness. When encountering this kind of thing, isn't that how everyone handles it? Maybe Enchanting Wang is the child of great-granduncle's fiancée, and the kind that looks very similar. That's why he got such a big shock just because he met her once. The girl that Pei Yuing called Yuan Yuan said as if it was a matter of fact. The others listened and looked at each other. What was that? It sounded like nonsense, but it seemed to make sense. Little did they know that this brain had already guessed most of the truth. On the way back to Chuanshan, I saw Enchanting Wang once. Although it was just a quick glance, but now that I think about it, I feel that he looks more and more like a member of the Pei family. The others didn't know what to say. Yuan, some things can't be said carelessly. If outsiders hear it, I'm just saying it in my own house. How can I let outsiders hear it? She inadvertently caught a glimpse of the old madam coming out of the room. The old madam had a speechless look on her face. She immediately went up to her with a smile and took her arm. Third grandmother, am I right? She then shook her arm like a spoiled child. Old madam reached out and poked her forehead. You don't think too much about it. Although he was at home, he still had to be prepared for any eventualities. Many things were caused by careless talk. Yuan's words should be taken as a joke. Don't spread it around. All right, let's disperse. Everyone looked at each other again. Could it be that Yuan had guessed correctly? That was really too. The others were still in an indescribable mood. Instead, it was Miss Yuan's elder brother who couldn't suppress his excitement. If it was really like this, in terms of seniority, Ma Yingying was Enchanting Wang's niece. He was a dignified Qin Wang. What kind of beauty couldn't he have? He wouldn't be so shameless as to forcefully snatch his own niece. He really didn't want face. Pei Shi also wanted face. She absolutely wouldn't allow this kind of thing to happen. How could he know that the truth was the opposite of what he thought? Miss Yuan understood her elder brother very well, especially when it came to Ma Yingying Jijie. Just by looking at his expression, she knew what he was thinking. She secretly rolled her eyes. Even if there was no Enchanting Wang, it still wouldn't be your turn. However, she was also very clear. Don't look at how her elder brother was deeply in love with Ma Yingying Jijie and had the attitude of not marrying anyone else. However, even if Ma Yingying Jijie married someone else in the end, he would at most be depressed for a period of time. He absolutely wouldn't reach the level of great-granduncle. It was even more impossible for him to not marry for his entire life and not have a single person by his side right now. There were no less than 3 Tongfang maids. This elder brother of hers, in essence, was the same as other young masters of aristocratic families. Min Yuhan wasn't unconscious for too long. It was only half a day before he woke up. It was true that he was unconscious, and the reason for his coma was also true. It was just that he didn't restrain himself. Instead, he repeatedly thought about those things that caused him the most pain and hatred. This infinitely magnified the negative emotions, causing the final result to not be surprising. After waking up, his entire person didn't seem to be much different from before. However, those who were close to him could clearly feel that he was more silent and more indifferent. This was a heart disease. As the saying goes, a heart disease needs to be treated with medicine of the heart. However, this medicine of the heart was long gone. Thus, no one could do anything about it. Min Yuhan rested for 2 days. Then, he got someone to pack his things. He was going to the main residence of the Pei family. To be exact, he was going to meet the Pei family head. The Min family and the Pei family's old residences were both in county cities and not in the prefectural city. Their residences took up almost half of the entire county city. In fact, the number of people with other surnames wasn't less than in other counties. It could be imagined that the county where their old residences were located was at least twice the size of an ordinary county city. The degree of prosperity wasn't inferior to the prefectural city, but it was also more peaceful and harmonious, clean and orderly. Of course, in such a place, the county magistrate was just a decoration. Not to mention the county city, it should be a large area of the entire county. That was all private territory. If anything happened, it would be their family affairs and private affairs. The Pei family and the Min family belonged to 2 different prefectures. However, they weren't far apart. A spacious road was specially opened between the 2 families. It was only 300 to 400 miles from the Chuanzhou prefectural city to the Min family's main residence. It was far more convenient and faster than taking the regular road to the Pei family's main residence. In other words, if Min Yuhan wanted to go to the Pei family's main residence, he had to go home first. This time, going to the Pei family's main residence might cause him to become enemies. However, so what? He didn't care at all. No one knew what Min Yuhan wanted to do except himself. If Li Hongyuan knew, he would probably still be indifferent. In his opinion, it was purely superfluous. A few days later, the 3rd round of the provincial examination ended smoothly. Most of the people who walked out of the examination hall felt that it was so simple. In fact, it was because the easiest questions were placed last. The questions set by a group of big shots in the imperial court should be more difficult. The difficult questions were placed first. In comparison, the questions at the end were naturally easier. Because there were people who came out in the first round, the people outside knew that the order of the examination had been adjusted. Everyone would think that there would be an impact. Those who took the examination for the first time were better off. Those who took it for granted would be more affected the more times they took the examination. Those who were waiting might not be more relaxed than those who were taking the examination. Without a doubt, there were those who were beaming with joy, while there were also those who were wailing loudly. Naturally, there were also those who were calm. However, no matter what, after being in the examination hall for so long, 99% of them were mentally and physically exhausted. It was only right for them to have a good sleep. These people didn't care. The examination hall had already started to mark the papers. Every paper would go through at least 3 people's hands. With the King of Hell in charge, no one dared to be careless. There were only 3 days to come out with the results. It was also a big project. Li Hongyuan waved his hand and left. He turned around and went to the treasury of the Chuanzhou prefecture. Seeing that the treasury was almost piled up with gold and silver, Li Hongyuan casually picked up a few silver ingots and gold bricks and looked at them. He threw them back. He didn't control his strength and the silver ingots scattered and fell to the ground. Box up all the gold and silver and ship them back to the capital. In the Chongzhou prefecture, because it wasn't time for taxes to be paid into the national treasury, they didn't think of directly sending them back to the capital. That was why they came up with such a childish idea. Now, with the previous example, they didn't even think about it and directly sent them back to the capital. As such, who would dare to have any ideas? As for the origin of these gold and silver, Li Hongyuan didn't want to know at all. He was 100% sure that it wasn't originally from the treasury. Li Hongyuan had stayed in the Chongzhou prefecture for so long. If they still hadn't prepared for this, it could only be said that they had put their necks under the butcher's knife. If they didn't want the opportunity given, it could be said that there was a hole in their heads. Fortunately, in front of their lives and money, these people still had hope. It was just unknown how much each of them had taken from their pockets. When the officials of the Chuanzhou prefecture learned of Li Hongyuan's decision, they seemed to have expected it. They were all silent. As for what they were thinking in their hearts, it was unknown. After checking the treasury, the next step was naturally the accounts. If they thought it was the same as the Chongzhou prefecture, they would be gravely mistaken. The good show had just begun. Chapter 318. After checking the treasury, the next step was naturally to check the accounts. If one thought that it was the same as Chongzhou prefecture, then one would be gravely mistaken. The good show had only just begun. Of course, there were still similarities. All the officials gathered together and made their own beds in the courtyard. Other than that, they had to take care of their own meals. Don't think that by having your family send your meals over, you could eat comfortably. The premise of comfort was not being picked on by Wang. In front of this person, he would say, "This meal has 2 more dishes than Ben Wang." In front of that person, he would say, "So and so, you're quite enjoying it," or else it would be, "Wang Fei advocates frugality, causing the officials' meals to get smaller and smaller with each meal more shabby than the last." However, after 2 days, each and every one of them was just a little better than eating pickled vegetables and eating steamed buns. At home, they tried every possible way to tamper with that little bit of food. Once they tasted a certain familiar taste, they would never eat a second bite. Now, tears were streaming down their cheeks as they secretly vowed that they would cherish it in the future. How could their little actions escape the eyes of the black-robed guards and Li Hongyuan's imperial bodyguards, especially the secret contacts? However, they all followed Wang's instructions and looked on coldly as if they did not see anything. Speaking of which, if they did not do something, how would they be able to get hold of more information that could be used against them? Sometimes, the more you did, the more mistakes you made. Now, it was obviously this kind of situation. Especially when they were doing little things under the eyes of the living king of hell, it was purely because they did not want to die quickly enough. The most direct result was that Wang Fei became more and more greedy, more and more black-hearted. She clearly sent gifts again and again, but she still did not see her family's return home. Speaking of which, although they guessed that it was Wang Fei who was greedy, but with so many things, they did not really hide it. The possibility that Wang did not know was close to zero. Such unbridled greed, did it also have Wang's tacit consent or even incitement? Therefore, as long as he didn't know the exact answer, his imagination wouldn't stop. Jingwan didn't care what those people thought. She was now working hard to squeeze those officials dry of their assets that didn't belong to them. Naturally, Li Hongyuan was incomparably supportive. However, he still kept saying that his wife was too soft-hearted. According to the extravagance of these officials, their little bit of salary wasn't even enough to feed their family. Therefore, the so-called little bit that belonged to them was actually already gone. If it was up to him, he would squeeze them dry until they were poor and had to tighten their belts to survive. Jiangnan was a land of affluence. On the other hand, the price of living there was actually higher than in the capital. A mansion could easily cost hundreds of taels of silver. In the capital, there were not many mansions that were worth millions of taels of silver. An official in Jiangnan, unless he did not engage in social activities or raise servants, lived a simple life as a family and lived in a small courtyard. That bit of salary could probably be raised, but was it possible? Every place paid attention to connections, paid attention to relationships. It was impossible to be completely independent of the circle. In the capital, with the support of the highest ruler, you could still be a lonely official. Elsewhere, it was simply a fool's dream. Normally, it would be the family opening a few shops, buying some land and building some manors. Otherwise, it would be the family members who were proficient in gold and stone. Of course, these were not the only channels. What was abnormal was naturally the gray income. Under normal circumstances, this was the most important. Jingwan thought that it was fine to just cut off this part. She didn't want to make people unable to live. What about those people who were plundered? There is one thing that didn't seem to be told to Wan. Li Suyan accidentally knew something before. 3 years ago, there was an earthquake in Min Shan County. There were 20,000 people who survived, and they reported 50,000 to the court. The court allocated 50,000 silver to settle down the 50,000 people, and all of it was embezzled. Do you know what happened to those 20,000 people? Jingwan's expression was not very good, displaced. Living in poverty. Li Hongyuan touched Jingwan's face. From this point of view, Wan is indeed a Jiao who was raised in a boudoir. She is too naive. Those people were pushed into the pile of corpses and burned to death together. Seeing Jingwan's face turn pale in an instant, he knew it was a little cruel for her. However, the cold smile on his face did not disappear. Min Shan County is in the territory of Chuanzhou Prefecture. Wan, tell me, in this matter, from the governor and governor of Shannon Commandery, to the governor of Chuanzhou Prefecture, to the magistrate of Min Shan County, who didn't do anything. Who is innocent? Even if they don't want to be involved, they are forced to be involved. Otherwise, they will be turned into ashes like those people. Jingwan looked at him. She had to admit that this man was not a good person. He could be cold-blooded and cold-hearted towards people or things that he did not care about. He could calmly say the cruelest things and did not even mind dragging others into the cruel reality. Why did you tell me? Under normal circumstances, didn't love want her to maintain her senses of beauty in the outside world as much as possible? Of course, I want Wan to know and understand me completely. Wan should naturally stay with the real me. Being fake is not my pursuit. One is marked by the company one keeps. Jingwan seemed to be talking to herself softly. It doesn't matter whether Wan is marked by red or black. However, it's good enough that you have some black ink on you. It's really not easy to dye you as black as me. In his previous life, Wan had experienced a lot of difficulties and hardships. However, even when she was dying, she did not become cynical and maintained her innocence. Jingwan smiled noncommittally. However, it was obvious that she would be more ruthless when she slaughtered people. It was no wonder that Li Hongyuan would be so ruthless to Chuanzhou Prefecture. After the incident in Min Shan County, Chuanzhou Prefecture had the most people dismounted. At the same time, Min Yuhan returned to the main residence of the Min family. After staying for a night, she turned to the main residence of the Pei family. There was an old man who looked amiable and wise, and a young girl with an elegant temperament and a calm demeanor, who was beautiful and gentle. One old and one young, they were exceptionally harmonious. However, Min Yuhan was extremely ruthless. She was almost certain that this old thing was raising his great-granddaughter in the same way as raising his daughter. Chapter 319. Clan leader Pei put down the chess piece in his hand and turned his head to look at Min Yuhan, who was walking towards him. It was as though he was looking at his beloved younger generation. After all, it was important to have grandchildren and not children. Towards the younger generation, they were very strict. The more they cared about them, the stricter they would be. Min Yuhan's fondness was always on the surface. It was as though the other party was not a man in his 40s. At this moment, he was waving at Min Yuhan with a loving smile on his face. When he did not know anything, he might have been touched. That feeling was as though 20 or 30 years had not existed. Uncle Pei was reminiscing about his daughter. That was the girl that he had always placed in his heart. Hence, he did not care at all. In the past, even when he was often away, he would occasionally come back. His relationship with the other party was very harmonious. He could even naturally put away the frost on his body and treat the other party as his own father. However, after he found out that everything was a lie and a pretense, the seemingly kind person was actually the most ruthless and cold-blooded. He had always maintained his good attitude towards him because he wanted to better maintain the relationship between the two families. Now, he finally understood what kind of situation the Pei family was in. In fact, when he thought about it carefully, it was simply unbelievable that the Pei family could maintain their relationship for such a long time. It could be said to be a miracle. Min Yuhan walked over unhurriedly. Before he could greet him, clan leader Pei had already asked him to sit down. In the past, regardless of whether he was sincere or pretending, he would always greet clan leader Pei politely. However, today, he no longer wanted to pretend. Hence, no matter what the other party's attitude was, he would not accept this greeting. Pei Xiuying had already automatically made way for Min Yuhan. When Min Yuhan looked over, she pursed her lips and smiled. Pei Xiuying greets Uncle Min. Min Yuhan did not sit down. Instead, his gaze fell on Pei Xiuying. Logically speaking, even if he was an elder or an ancestor, and the two families were close, as a man, it was very rude and even impolite to look at the other family's daughter without hiding anything. It was not the first time he met Pei Xiuying, but it was the first time he did so. When he came back last year and saw Pei Xiuying, Min Yuhan felt that the other party was a well-educated and gentle girl. She had a bit of Wan style in the past. Earlier, she was just a little girl and he did not have any impression of her. However, he thought that if Wan was still around, the daughter she gave birth to would also be this outstanding. But now, the more he looked at her, the more disgusted he felt. There was a saying that went, trying to paint a tiger but ended up looking like a dog. Especially when he knew that the other party did not reject his great-grandfather's arrangement and even personally went to meet him. In Chuanzhou, he had asked Yuan about the journey from Chongzhou to Chuanzhou. After hearing Pei Xiuying's attitude, Yuan did not understand what was going on, but he was very clear about it. Before anything happened, she started to spy on the enemy's situation and attempted to provoke Jin Qinwang Fei's authority. She was simply jackals of the same tribe as her grandfather. Arrogant and self-righteous. Who did she think Jin Qinwang was? A wooden puppet who would do everything according to your plan. Even if they were his parents, they would not force their son to sleep with any woman. Moreover, where did the confidence come from to think that the other party would definitely sleep with you? Was it just based on that face? Did she think that all men in the world were shallow and stupid, unable to control their pants when they saw a beautiful woman? Moreover, to put it bluntly, this woman was originally born from a weak background. If you were in a weak position in your family background, then sleeping with her would be a waste of time. You, Pei Yuing, and Jin Qinwang were in this situation. Willing to degrade yourself and take the initiative to be a concubine, could you be any more despicable? A noble daughter of an aristocratic family. Sure enough, this family did not live up to its name. Even the upbringing had become so unbearable. There was no pride, no real nobility, and even less that lofty and unyielding character. Pei Yuing was somewhat uncomfortable under Min Yuhan's gaze, but from beginning to end, she kept her eyes down and maintained a faint smile. If you don't want to smile, then don't smile. In fact, this kind of smile that you thought was perfect was very disgusting. It was not a smile that came from the heart, it was not a sincere smile that transcended boundaries. Min Yuhan sat down and casually picked up a chess piece. Is it the white piece's turn? Without waiting for clan head Pei to respond, he placed the piece. What kind of person was clan head Pei? He was a sly old fox and naturally had a good grasp of people's changes. Furthermore, Min Yuhan's performance was so obvious. A strange look flashed through his eyes. He picked up the black piece and continued to place the piece. Yuhan, you haven't come to see me for a while. Isn't that so? Great-grandfather was just nagging about Uncle Min, Pei Yuing interrupted with a chuckle. Min Yuhan looked at the chessboard and pondered for a moment. After placing the piece, he said unhurriedly, I've been a little busy recently. Please forgive me, uncle. Oh. What have you been busy with? Clan head Pei asked naturally, the kind that was very familiar and affectionate. What have I been busy with? It's considered a major event in my life, Min Yuhan said indifferently. A major event in your life? Yuhan, are you finally going to get married? Good, good, good. This is really great. For so many years, you didn't have anyone by your side who cared about you. Now that you've finally thought it through, it can't be better. Clan head Pei seemed very happy, and his happiness was mixed with emotion. Is that so? Then I have to congratulate Uncle Min, Pei Yuing said with a smile, as if she was very happy for him. Min Yuhan suddenly smiled. Actually, I still have to ask for Uncle's permission on this matter. As soon as he said this, clan head Pei suddenly had a bad premonition. Yuhan, what do you mean? Could it be that you want Uncle to be your matchmaker? No problem. Min Yuhan held the piece between his fingers and looked at clan head Pei. That's not it. Because of Chin Chin, Uncle has always felt sorry for me. Why don't you marry Pei Yuing to me? Although Pei Yuing is far from Chin Chin, this bit of elegance is enough. What do you think, Uncle? Not to mention how ugly Pei Yuying's expression was, the smile on clan head Pei's face disappeared, and he looked solemn. Yuhan, this joke is too much. Joke? No, I'm serious. Chapter 320. Yuhan, you're Pei Yingying's elder. The Min family and the Pei family are family friends. If you act like this, it's not good for either of our families, Uncle, you don't think it's good? Min Yuhan interrupted him calmly. I think it's good. You know, I once thought that Pei Yingying was specially trained by Uncle. Without a doubt, it's good. After all, Uncle has always treated me like a great-grandchild. You're especially compassionate towards me. I'm very grateful to Uncle. As for the relationship between our families, since it's a marriage alliance, it's natural that the relationship between our families should be better. Pei Yingying was screaming crazily in her heart. Who do you think you are? What right do you have? What right do you have? She clenched her handkerchief so tightly that her fingernails almost broke the skin of her palm. However, because of her upbringing, she tried her best to restrain herself. Not only that, she even had a faint smile on her face. In fact, if she really exploded, Min Yuhan might think more highly of her. However, she was still thinking about the bearing of an aristocratic family's daughter. Speaking of which, Patriarch Pei's cultivation was indeed deeper. At this moment, he was still slightly solemn. He stroked his beard and didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, He looked at Min Yuhan with some tolerance as if he was looking at a junior who had made a mistake. Yuhan, I don't know what's wrong with you today. Did you drink a few more cups before coming here? Or is there some other reason? I hope this matter will end here. It's best for everyone. Min Yuhan's smile became more obvious and more genuine. Many people hadn't seen such a bright smile in many years. This person seemed to have become more than 10 years younger. However, no matter who saw it, they would feel that this smile was especially dazzling. Uncle, do you think I'm not clear-headed? No, I'm very clear-headed. In the past few decades of my life, I've never been more clear-headed than now. I don't understand. Why would Uncle feel that it's not good? Could it be that Uncle actually looks down on me? Was it all fake? If it was so easy to stop, he wouldn't have come. He was here to find trouble. He was even prepared to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Pei family. If he continued to feign civility, he wouldn't be able to bear it. These are two completely different things. How can you confuse them together? Yuhan, you have deep feelings for Pei Pei. Treating her granddaughter like this is an insult to her. Moreover, you're an elder. Acting like this in front of the younger generation is simply disrespectful. You're not only embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing yourself. Hearing this, Min Yuhan even laughed out loud, as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. Uncle, what you said is interesting. If Momo knew in the underworld that you, as a father, were preparing to give her grandniece to her son as a concubine, she might just climb out of the mausoleum. Embarrassing. Who's the one who's losing face? Was there anyone else in Pei? The Min families know this matter. How was there anyone else in the Mins? How's this how, and how? How? No. No, this is that person is. Yan the families is our s, have re have a's. Have set s, tv's, t tes s in this have a have. To cause VVVE had to have a misunderstanding. Min Yuhan patiently explained her findings. Uncle, tell me. Where's the misunderstanding? Pei Pei's heart calmed down a little. If that was the case, he could deal with it. However, he realized that Min Yuhan's acuity and his concern for the Pei family seemed to be a little too much. If that was the case, he had to think of a way to get rid of this person. This kind of person was a threat to the Pei family. Yuhan has indeed misunderstood. Uncle, can you swear to the heavens that you don't have such a plan and you won't do it in the future? If you do, the Pei family will be destroyed. Min Yuhan's voice was cold and her eyes were burning. What she said was the most vicious curse for the Pei family. What did Pei Pei care about the most? That was the Pei family. Min Yuhan's words had touched his bottom line and touched his reverse scale. It could be said that she had truly angered him. He did not even bother to hide the hostility in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at a dead person. Min Yuhan met his gaze but was not afraid at all. Instead, she smiled even more casually. The aura of an aristocratic family's young master was even more prominent. It made people feel that the aura between them had swapped. Pei Pei was the one who was suppressed. It's just an oath. If there's no such thing, then there's naturally nothing. Furthermore, in this world, how many people take oaths seriously? Uncle, don't you think so? As long as Uncle swears to the heavens, I will immediately kowtow and apologize to Uncle. I will even apologize to Pei Yingying. These words were basically blocking Pei Yingying's path. If he made an oath now and went against it in the future, he would not only be breaking his promise. Pei Yingying suddenly smiled. Yuhan has really grown up after being away for so many years. There was a hint of gratification in his words. Min Yuhan nodded her head indifferently. I've been stupid for too long. I have to grow up. Otherwise, I won't even know how I died. Pei Yingying had already put away the emotions that made her angry. The smile on her face had also disappeared. She looked even more composed and dignified. She had already sensed that the atmosphere at this moment was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. There was also a heaviness that she did not know about. This was also the first time she really looked at this granduncle of the Min family. She had once looked down on this granduncle of hers. She thought that he was addicted to love and could not extricate himself. As an aristocratic family's young master, he did not think about returning to the family. Instead, he wandered around all year round. He was simply not a man. He was the shame of an aristocratic family. Such a person should be banished from the family forever. In her opinion, such a man was always a little incompetent and could not be shown in public. Now, it seemed that this was not the case. Uncle might as well consider my proposal. Although I am Pei Yingying's elder, Jin Wang is also one. Jin Wang is related by blood. This has a greater impact. Moreover, Jin Wang has a Wang Fei who is officially married to him. Jin Wang Fei's grandfather is the Minister of Personnel and holds great power. Her adoptive mother is Great Princess Royal and is extraordinarily honorable. Pei Yingying was sent over by you. According to Pei Shi's identity and background, she does not even have the qualifications to be its Fei. After entering the inner courtyard of Jin Wang Fu, it is already good that you can bring 2 servant girls to serve you. Now, in the inner courtyard of Jin Wang Fu, other than the Wang Fei, there are no other concubines. All the power is naturally in the hands of Jin Wang Fei. In the face of a person who is clearly a threat, do you think that Jin Wang Fei will be indifferent? Or do you think that Pei Yingying can compete with Jin Wang Fei with just 1 or 2 people? Otherwise, do you think that before Jin Wang Fei returns to the capital, Pei Yingying can win over Jin Wang Fei's heart? She might even get pregnant before marriage. Min Yuhan seemed to be slowly analyzing the pros and cons, but that sentence was stabbing a knife into the chest of Pei clan head and Pei Yingying. Mentioning Jingwan's identity and background, mentioning Pei Yingying's identity and background, as a daughter of an aristocratic family, you look down on them. Who would have thought that they did not take you seriously at all? Pei Yingying was once full of confidence that she could defeat Jingwan and become the final winner. But after seeing Jingwan, her confidence took a big hit. Now that she heard Min Yuhan's words, although she did not want to admit it, it was a fact that could not be any more real. That little bit of confidence she had invisibly shattered. Pei clan head glanced at his great-granddaughter and roughly knew that some of the previous efforts had been destroyed. Looking at Min Yuhan, who might not have smiled as much in the past 20 years, there were 2 possibilities for such a big change. First, he was suddenly stimulated and knew that he went to see Jin Wang. Second, it was accumulated over time. It was just that he hid it too well and did not reveal it. Now, for some reason, he no longer hid it. Chapter 321. Min Yuhan knew that this old fox was not easy to deal with, but since the other party was not in a hurry, he was even less anxious. Today, he was going to completely tear off the old man's face. He wanted to see how thick his skin was to be able to continue carrying out his original plan after tearing off a layer. Aristocratic families have their pride and have a very deep concept of family status. I don't need to remind Uncle of this. Uncle is probably clearer than anyone else. He was clearer than anyone else and looked down on those people more than anyone else. Yet, he broke the rules himself and was so hypocritical. Has Uncle ever thought of the consequences of giving Pei Ying to Jin Wang as a concubine? If the most outstanding legitimate daughter of the main family can be given as a concubine, the other girls would naturally be even more despicable. Even if they wanted to marry back as a legitimate wife, they would feel that it was a disgrace to their own status. In this way, it would really be cats and dogs from all walks of life that could climb up Peishur's door. Peishur's men would naturally not be able to marry any good women. Even if they stood at a high position as you wished, could it make up for this? But I think uncle will not care. After all, there are already signs of this. Who let Peishur's aristocratic family name exist only in name? The flourishing Peishur relied on in-laws to survive. If these in-laws knew, would they immediately divorce the woman and cut off all ties? Of course, the Pei family still has many famous scholars supporting them, and they have students all over the world. If they have high positions and generous salaries, they won't forget these teachers. However, if these people know about the actions of uncle, the Pei family will probably collapse first without external help. It seemed that Peishur was weighing the pros and cons, but it was also Min Yuhan who did not hold back and continued to stab the knife. He did not leave any face for Peishur's girls. He peeled off the pretense of peace layer by layer and even threatened them. Had Patriarch Pei not considered these problems? Of course not. So, in the early stages of the matter, he had to hide it internally and externally. Even if he helped Jin Qin Wang, it was best to hide Pei Ying's matter. When the dust settled, it would not be too late to expose it. Peishur's old-fashioned people were not few, but there were only a few who were obsessed with learning and only liked to indulge in the mountains and rivers. After understanding Peishur's glorious history, who did not want to restore the glory of the past? So, even if they knew what he did, they would probably remain silent and look to the future. However, man proposes, God disposes. Before he could even do anything, he had already been seen through. Clan leader Pei, who had always been conceited, was actually quite angry in his heart. Min Yuhan seemed to have seen through clan leader Pei's thoughts clearly. She sneered in her heart. He wasn't the only one who saw through your arrangements. The person you schemed against was even more clear about it. Although Min Yuhan wasn't clear about Li Hongyuan's true power, he had been traveling around Jiangnan for nearly a year without leaving a trace. However, at the crucial moment, there would always be someone who would appear at the right time to help him achieve his goal without attracting any attention. Min Yuhan had done this kind of thing before. In the beginning, he let them help to clean up the situation more, but later on, it gradually decreased. However, he did not doubt Li Hongyuan's ability. He wanted to see if you used Jin Qin Wang to achieve your goal or if you were used by Jin Qin Wang until there was nothing left. Although he and Li Hongyuan had only met twice, but that kind of power was so obvious. If he ascended the throne, he would definitely not tolerate a foreign relative. Peishur's calculations were so loud that he would not be lenient if he could use them. After using them, he might leave some leeway for you. Otherwise, he would be merciless to burn the bridge after crossing the river. Since Yuhan has already said so, this old man will not hide it. This is Peishur's matter and has nothing to do with outsiders. Yuhan does not need to worry. Uncle's meaning is that you are determined to do this. Min Yuhan had never thought that he would affect this old thing's decision. If he was so easily swayed, he would not have come to this step today. His original intention was not to stop the other party. Yuhan has already pointed out Peishur's situation. Peishur cannot be defeated, so there are some things that must be done. Although he once deceived himself and did not want to admit it, but when it was really pointed out, it was not that he could not bear it. At least on the surface, there was no difference. Falling into Jin Qin Wang's hands, he was afraid that he would be defeated even faster. Perhaps it was not necessary, but it could be done in another way. If you were so ambitious and calculated, no one would be happy. If you were sincere and only focused on doing things, using Peishur's real strength to fight, perhaps you could achieve unexpected results. Instead, you tried to take shortcuts, rely on nepotism, and use such crooked methods. In this case, uncle might as well change the candidate. At least she is of the same generation as Jean Qin Wang, and it will look better on your face. If one of your granddaughters is not enough, then two. I remember that uncle still has a pair of twin granddaughters who are not married yet. This is also a big feature. Maybe they will be more attractive. If two of them are not enough, then three. If not, then four. Anyway, you don't lack people in your line. This was in line with Jingwan's lack of quality, make up for it with quantity. However, this sarcasm had reached an extraordinary level. Even a saint could get angry. Yuhan, there should be a limit to everything. Min Yuhan smiled non-committally. After a confrontation with this old thing, he had almost made up his mind to shed all pretense of cordiality between the two families. However, although his position in the Min family was not low, it was not good for him to decide the family's affairs. Now, the head of the Min family was his elder brother. Moreover, the Min family was not like the Pei family. There were many officials in the Min family, but there were no high positions. Instead, they were more like crops. Even so, the head of the Min family did not have the final say. As a member of the Min family, although he did not have deep feelings for this family, there were still some things that needed to be said. At that time, the difference would probably be him arguing with the Pei family alone, or the Min family arguing with the Pei family. In that case, nephew will take his leave first. Min Yuhan threw the chess piece between his fingers back into the chess box. He stood up slowly and brushed his sleeves. When he was about to leave, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at Pei Yueying. Pei Yueying, why don't you consider my opinion? Pei Yueying's face was a little stiff. Thank you for Min family's granduncle's favor. Min Yuhan chuckled, now it's really interesting. A daughter of an aristocratic family would rather be a concubine than a wife. Speaking of which, if I was born poor and was just an ordinary person, it would be fine if you rejected me. If we were to compare Jean Qin Wang and I, the advantage would probably be that the other party is young and powerful. Don't you know that this young man easily likes the new and hates the old and doesn't know how to dote on others? In the past, he was able to guard for your grandaunt. In the future, he will naturally be able to guard for you. Isn't it better than fighting for affection and scheming against each other? You really won't consider it. Thank you for Min family's granduncle's favor. Pei Yueying still said the same thing. This woman is really superficial. And you, Pei Yueying, can't even compare to one of your grandaunt's fingers. His clothes fluttered as he left. He was elegant and had a bit of an immortal's aura. He did not seem like someone who would humiliate an unmarried girl so mercilessly. However, this was indeed the case. How could he not see Pei Yueying's pale face? Clan head Pei looked at his back and slightly narrowed his eyes. He found that this former prospective son-in-law had completely exceeded his expectations. This kind of change was different from the previous one. It was definitely not formed overnight. However, he had been back for almost a year and had seen it many times, but he had not found any clues. He had been on guard since long ago. Clan head Pei was almost 100% sure that Min Yuhan might have found something. Great-grandfather. Pei Yueying softly called out with a little worry. Clan head Pei turned to look at her. Yueying, were you affected by your Min family's granduncle's words? It's impossible to say that it was not at all. After being humiliated like this, Pei Yueying was still a girl. It was not an exaggeration to say that she hated Min Yuhan. However, she knew that great-grandfather was not asking about her personal feelings. Between a family and an individual would always be at the back. Even in the face of a great enemy, if it was beneficial to the family, she had to suppress her personal feelings. I'm worried that Min family's granduncle will spread the news. That would be very disadvantageous to our Pei family. Don't worry, he won't. He was very certain about this. About Jean Qin Wang, great-grandfather, you don't have to say anything more. Pei family carefully raised me. As a member of Pei family, when Pei family needs me, I will naturally not shirk my duty. As the saying goes, when the nest is overturned, there are no intact eggs. If something happens to Pei family, as a daughter of Pei family, how can I have a good ending? Clan head Pei nodded his head in relief. It's good that you understand. Go back and rest. Yes, Yueying will take her leave. After Pei Yueying left, clan head Pei lowered his head and looked at the chessboard. One black and one white chess piece fell one after another until the winner was decided. He took a sip of tea and slowly exhaled. Ah Zhong, go and deal with the people. He seemed to be careless, but a sentence determined several lives. Naturally, there would be people serving by the side. However, clan head Pei did not say anything from the beginning. Although the people were dismissed by the housekeeper called Ah Zhong, they were actually controlled after they left. If they knew something that they should not know, then even Pei Yueying's personal maidservant would not be able to survive. Therefore, the biddy sent 2 more maidservants to Pei Yueying. Pei Yueying just nodded her head and continued to read her book. https://11/11807/6653617 Mobile edition. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.